Laser continued on as the standard treatment for diabetic retinopathy for decades, but the vision of the people getting the treatment never really improved. It only stopped declining. And laser mainly treated proliferative diabetic retinopathy, having little effect on the leaky veins of diabetic macular edema. People in the diabetes eye care community wanted more than just halted destruction of vision. They wanted to improve the vision of those with proliferative diabetic retinopathy and find better treatment for macular edema. Researchers started exploring at the molecular level to find what they referred to as factor X.
The question of why does diabetic patient develop so much blindness and really was thought to be due to factor X by people earlier proposed this in 1940s and 50s.
Factor X was thought to be a molecule produced in the eye, one that increased when the eye was deprived of oxygen due to high blood sugar, and prompted blood vessel leakage and growth. With those criteria in mind, researchers ramped up efforts in the late 1970s. Labs around the world, including the lab of Dr. George King, research director at Joslin Diabetes Center, set up a suite of experiments to test any molecule that seemed to fit the bill. Over a few decades, they tested dozens of possibilities, but couldn't pin down the elusive factor X. Then, in the mid-1980s, a researcher at Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center named Harold Dvorak identified a molecule 50 times more potent than histamine, a well-known cause of blood vessel leakage. Not long after, Dr. Napoleon Ferrara of the biotech company Genentech was able to clone the molecule, allowing him to home in on its exact functionality. He found that not only did the molecule cause blood vessels to leak, it also caused them to grow. He called it vascular endothelial growth factor, or VEGF for short. It was studied in cancer at first in the lab of Dr. Judah Folkman at Children's Hospital. Dr. Folkman published a paper showing that VEGF increased in the oxygen-deprived cancer cells, confirming that it fulfilled 2 of the 3 criteria for the mysterious factor X.
So when the oxygen was going down, the VEGF was being produced much more, and this VEGF then caused leakage and blood vessels to grow. And when we were looking at this, and I saw that report, I looked at it and said, that's exactly what we need in the eye to mediate the problems from diabetes.
Dr. Aiello, Dr. Beetham's grandson, and then a research fellow in Dr. King's lab, suggested they study VEGF at Joslin to find out if it is produced in diabetic eyes. Their lab contacted colleagues from around the world to gather enough eye fluid samples to study in culture dishes, ranging from no diabetes to significantly uncontrolled diabetes.
And then we were able to take those fluids from the eye and measure the VEGF in them, and also look at whether or not this was a time where there was leakage or permeability or blood vessel growth going on. And amazingly enough, particularly in diabetes, when we had these complications, the levels of VEGF in the eye were hugely high, very, very elevated. But either very early in the disease or in non-diabetic eyes, the levels were very, very low.
The elusive factor X had been confirmed.